evening, everyone, and welcome to IDG Chit Chat Live for the week of January 18th. Today, we will be talking about this week's episode of Finding Your Roots, featuring Maya Rudolph, Shonda Rhimes, and Keenen, Ivory, Wayans. Hope y'all are ready. Hi, everyone. I am Shannon Combs-Bennett, the obviously speaking challenge this evening. I am the creative director for the In-Depth Genealogist, and joining me for tonight's show are Jennifer Alford, our publisher, Terry O'Connell, our executive director, Sherry Hudson-Patsy from Carolina Girl Blog, Melissa Barker, certified archivist and professional genealogist, and Valerie Eichler-Lair, professional genealogist from Val's Roots. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
Hello. It's good to be here.
Yay, we've got a big panel. This should be fun and exciting or very, very long. I'm not sure which.
All the above.
Yes.
Well, thank you all for joining us. You guys have been on the show before, so we're all regulars. But is there anything new in your lives you want to make sure that we know about? New blogs, new... All right, that was your chance to toot your own horn.
What about you, Valerie?
Slick.
Yay.
Slig.
And then somebody talked to roll out the drum roll because I haven't posted this yet, but right before I left, ProGen certificate.
Yay.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Slig is on my wish list for
Mine's
after my youngest goes to college, it looks like.
Oh my goodness, that's a ways off.
Well,
Send him next year.
It's the whole in school, two working parents, one must be home to take care of the children thing,
Yeah.
you know. It is.
Darn
It is. But, so what did everyone think of, in general, what did everyone think of the show? I thought it was pretty good this week, yeah?
I thought it was good too.
It was good.
It was really interesting.
I thought it was really interesting, too. And, of course, there were tears. There's always tears.
Yeah.
And there was ooh and ahs and gloves.
Yes. Yes.
I just loved how Maya reacted to everything.
Yes.
She was just like, this is
Yeah.
awesome. It was so neat to see.
That, and then Shonda had that quivering lip towards the end.
Oh, I know.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
and,
she got all choked up.
Matilda.
and Matilda, yes.
Yes.
She had always
Yeah.
wanted the name Matilda. Oh, that gave me chills.
Well, we have a list of things that we want to make sure that we talk about this evening. Anyone have a preference where we should start? Or you want me to pick one out of the hat for you?
Go for it.
Okay.
Go
well,
for
let's
it.
start. I thought it was interesting that they gave a little bit, especially for Maya, the background of the Pale of Settlements. I don't think that is a term that a lot of people in the general population, unless they have Jewish ancestors from that area of Russia, may have ever heard of.
I hadn't, to be honest, I hadn't. I've never done any Jewish genealogy. I had never heard of it.
Yeah, the Pale of Settlement, that was an area where, you know, all these poor Jewish Russians were forced into, and they lived there for quite a while. A lot of people get very confused about, you know, talking about, oh, I have Lithuanian or Slovakian or, you know, Belarus. You know, those were all part of Russia at some point. And, you know, Terry, your mother-in-law, would get upset about that.
Well, it's the whole Lithuanian Russian. Now they're not Jewish, but they're
Right. No.
the great grandfather was from Russia. Her father was born in Lithuania, but I believe he might have been born on what was a Russian military base.
Oh, wow.
But it is like they're not Lithuanian. But I've taken like the family name to the Family History Center, and they're like, it's not really a Jewish, or it's not a Russian name. It's not really a Polish name. Nobody can decide really where it comes from. So
Interesting.
very specific. Russian is Russian.
Well, it opened doors, you know, clues, you know, for a current project I'm working on. And
really?
That's great.
Yeah. And so I'm hoping with that, you know, the information that they gave and the historical part of it, you know, and there were 4 million, you know, that's he said 40% of the world's Jewish population. So, I got another stone to unturn, and then to take her back 7 generations.
Yeah, that was
Like,
impressive.
Whoa, goosebumps.
I've managed to get back 3 generations to my Jewish family, and to me that's like, I'll be lucky if I get beyond that. To get all the way back to 1799 is just awesome. I was so jealous.
Yes, and that birth record was just awesome to find, especially after the wars and records being destroyed. And
yeah.
I think it proves once again that even though you might have ancestors from a, here in the South, a burned county, or a worn, torn country, you may still find something. So you shouldn't just mark it off your list as, oh, it's all gone, because you never know what survived where.
Yeah,
That's
leave
very
no
true.
stone unturned.
That's right.
Well, and as I've learned more about Jewish research myself, I've also heard that, especially in Europe, because areas became part of different countries over the years, that you shouldn't rule out checking, okay, at that time they were part of the Russian Empire or part of Poland, or you should check those archives as well, because they might have, a copy of, whatever records they have that could pertain to your family. So you can't exactly say, oh, well, all the records were destroyed. There could be that town had to report their census or their vital records to a central government, which may not be in the country that it is in now.
Well, that's why I got a clue for Kalisz, Austria, from a World War draft card. However, we don't know how, we got to follow that up. But then, like I said, the clue here in the Pale of Settlement and stuff is like, well, look at everything.
What were you going to say, Terry?
I was going to say, Lisa Kudrow's episode of Who Do You Think You Are in the very first season really showed that, because some of the records that they didn't expect to find were like I think it was the Polish archives when she went in there. And it was from whether it was Russia or whatever it was originally.
Yeah.
So definitely leave no stone unturned.
Yeah.
All I knew about the Pale of Settlement was because of Catherine the Great, because I had this minor obsession with her as a child. Y'all know I'm weird, right?
A little bit. A total geek.
Yeah.
Perfect profession.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know. But so the other thing that we talked about were some of the more unique or interesting record sets. For instance, the will that freed all of the slaves, and that was for Keenen, right?
I believe so.
Ivory Wayans. Yeah, at the end where, am I correct?
That was still Maya.
That was still Maya.
That was still.
Okay.
Oh,
I had them. That's right. His
Yeah.
is a different one that made me
I have my notes.
His is the other one that made me giggle, not go, oh. So I thought that was interesting, especially how they dug into the court records, because they had to take the grandson of the man who freed them to court.
To court. Yes.
Which was amazing.
And he won. That's the amazing thing, is he won.
Mm-hmm.
And her reaction to that was incredible too. She couldn't believe it, as probably all of us watching was like, what? He won at that time period?
Right.
So
there's a movie coming out of that.
yes.
Really.
I put off to the side of my notes in quotes that she said "cool." It was unbelievable that in a white predominant area, and that there were, and Lewis Gates also pointed out that there were white witnesses on his behalf.
Right.
And
because they were in Kentucky, weren't they in Kentucky?
Yeah.
I believe they were.
I believe so.
So here's the interesting thing about that. They were in Mercer County, which is where a lot of my ancestors came and then left from. That was a way station for my ancestors. And what I found interesting was right about the same time, I now want to go and do some social history research because, like I said, about the same time, I had an ancestor who came with 10 or so slaves from Virginia to the same area, and in his will, freed all of his slaves.
Oh, that's interesting.
So I'm wondering if there was something going on in that area of Kentucky, or because the
Yeah.
abolitionist movement was picking up, because that was about the 1830s, if I'm
Mhm.
remembering correctly.
Mhm.
I did
Yeah.
not take notes this time. Oh my God. But now I'm curious because I hadn't heard of that before. And then listening to the show and realizing they were from the same, I mean, maybe not, Mercer County at that time was a large county, but I'm now wondering if there was something going on in the social atmosphere of
Mhm.
not only the area, but the climate of the time. What exactly was going on? Does anybody have any interesting insight to that, or have ever heard of anything from that area before?
I
Now I'm
haven't, not like
curious.
that, but I'll bet you
Mhm.
newspapers may be a clue to that. To see what was going on in the time in the newspapers, you might be able to find something out.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
That's some
I
Well,
love
and you
local
have a
histories.
Hang on,
you
hang
have a good amount of time because even though the will was from 1826, it went all the way up to 1830s for the the grandson to be taken to court. So you've got say 1820 to 1835 or 1840 even. So you've got a good time period, amount of time.
What about you, Melissa? I think you were trying to say something there for a second.
I was just thinking about local histories and also some diaries or personal papers at the time for that might be in the
yeah.
archives.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, that would be a good thing to look at too.
Yeah, you might have more success with that
Right.
compared to the newspapers
True.
back then.
And even calling a local historical society, they may be able to tell you, oh yeah, this was going on at that time period. So
Right.
I just found it interesting, having that connection to the same
yeah.
area.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Cool.
Let's see here. We also talked about, Sherry brought up especially that there's a little bit of controversy going on online this week about the slave lists that were shown.
Yes. Yes, I'm very curious as to how people are feeling about that research with the slave schedules and how you can go from this person had the same last name, the slaveholder had the same last name as we have found for my ancestor in the 1870s, and then taking that leap to looking at the slave schedules and saying, oh, this person is the same age, so therefore that must be that person. So I'm wondering if there was more information out there than what we saw, because that seems to me a big leap.
Yeah, I did notice.
Every week.
But then I don't know. So I mean, I don't know. But I would like to know if they had something else.
What were you gonna
Yeah,
say,
and I
Jen?
noticed that when they were talking about it, that he made a point to say, that a likely scenario would be that they took the surname of their owner.
Right.
So he said that to cover his butt, of course. And I just can't help but think, it's really kind of the only avenue that they had. And so that's kind of the way they went. But I really hope that there was more to it than
Me too.
what they
Me too.
showed.
I do
Me
think
too.
it was probably you film for several hours and then you have a 20-minute segment situation.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But what worries me about that is if there is more and they had to have more to prove it, when somebody is watching who doesn't do research, they may leap to those conclusions when they're, trying to do it.
Oh, what
So
are you
that's what
talking
bothers me
about?
about it.
That never happened.
Right.
Another thing that was interesting with this show was with Keenen Ivory Wayans. He had ancestors from Sumter and Clarendon County, South Carolina, and I have a ton of ancestors. And so I wrote down the names to see if my ancestors lived near them, and thinking, I hope none of them owned them.
When they brought up South Carolina, I thought of you, Sherry.
I thought, not again.
Not again.
My ancestors.
We had to laugh at his reaction about the one ancestor who was kidnapped in Canada and went back.
Yes, absolutely. But you know, it's a family thing. It had to have been a family thing. It had to have been. He didn't want to. I can't even imagine why he wouldn't have stayed, other than his family was there.
What were you
I
going to
can't
say,
think of
Melissa?
another reason.
I was just going to say that I like the fact that Keenen, that in his mind, could understand the fact that he would go back for his family. You know, even though he was a slave, you know, not all, and some may disagree with me, but not all slave owners were mean to their slaves. Some actually took very good care of their slaves. And so maybe that was the case in this case, but not obviously he was still a slave. But I think the family thing came into play. I mean, you know, leaving your children, your wife, you know, things like that. And so, but I was glad that Keenen took it the way that he did.
I loved his. Sorry, Melissa. I loved his comment about how he wanted the coon cut off his foot. You know, that's what he wanted in his his ancestry. But he got the guy that went back. I thought that was really.
That was so funny.
But I also think that the gentleman probably had a tie to not only the community but the house, because he stayed on as a caretaker after emancipation, and he worked on the grounds. So he obviously not only had a great love for maybe not the people, but at least the land and the community. So to me, I can see how, you know, if his family was there and he grew up there and that was the place he knew.
That's all he knew. Yeah, that's what he knew.
Maybe he, you know, I'm not sure I would want, even though I had the opportunity of being free dangled in front of me, would it be I never go home and never see what I love and know again?
Even Keenen said that. He said that wouldn't be freedom to him.
Right. Yeah. You know, for the love for his family and being there, and like y'all said, it may not have been that bad, you know, or that mean. But you don't know that part of it. But and so, but yeah.
To Melissa's point, I will say this: when we went to South Carolina last spring, we went and saw the
the slave quarters.
We saw the slave house at the
Myrtle Plantation.
No.
Were you down in Charleston?
Yeah, something on the Ashley. Oh, gosh.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that does that.
Anyhow, beside the point, they still have people working that descended from the slaves there.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, it was so important to their families. I mean, the one guy, even after, I think they had people living in the slave housing until maybe the 70s that were children of the slaves.
Wow. Are you talking about Magnolia Plantation?
Yes, Magnolia. Thank you. Oh, what was it?
Bingo.
It was beautiful, so if you're ever over there, go see it.
It is beautiful.
Well, I have to say... Go ahead.
Sorry, Valerie.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we were talking about the documents, and one of the things that I have found this season, actually, is with the guests that they have and the fact that they ooh and ah over these documents and the way that they react to them. It's, as an archivist and as a professional genealogist, we see, you know, we see these same documents every day in our research, and I think sometimes we can tend to get kind of used to seeing them, and so it's very refreshing to me to see these stars just ooh and ah over them, and I think, you know, I need to start oohing and ahhing a little more.
That's very true.
I think that's one of the reasons.
Still see them.
Go ahead, Terry.
I am not.
I have to say that's one of the reasons why I enjoy working with clients, is because even though I look at a document and I've analyzed it and it's just a census record, or it's just a directory, or, you know, whatever it might be, when I present that information to somebody else, it's sometimes emotional. I'm working with a very good friend of mine who's African American to research his family history, and his mother was here over Christmas. And to be able to sit down with her and show her her second great-grandfather, because I was able to get back to just pass the, show her first slave ancestor, and the tears.
Mm.
And it's like,
Aw.
oh my God, things that I'm like, and here's the census record and blah, 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 blah,
Oh
blah.
my
And she's
gosh.
sitting on the couch crying
Yeah.
because
Aw.
her parents never talked about it,
Right.
Yeah.
Mm.
I must
know?
be a total geek because I still ooh and ah and get goosebumps and cry. I'm in Salt Lake City working on somebody else's ancestors, and I'm sitting there, oh my gosh, look at this,
Oh, that's
So,
why we love you, Valerie.
aw, thanks.
No,
Yeah.
Val, I am not too. When I was in Ireland, I went to the church that my ancestors were married in, their kids were baptized in, and she pulled out the book. And I got to see where they
Oh,
first
wow.
put it in.
Ugh.
It was like, oh my, I couldn't believe that she pulled it out for me. Okay.
All right, so
I'd have cried right on spot.
yeah,
Yes. Yes.
I totally would too.
I was crying at your pictures, Terry, that you posted.
I know. They were so beautiful.
Many
Yeah.
of them online. There's so many more.
So speaking of records also, and especially census records, I don't know if you guys have noticed, and maybe I'm just not catching it this season, but remember last season how they got in trouble for making the cutaways?
Yes.
And not
Oh,
I've been seeing entire records this time and no
Yes.
cutaways.
Yes.
Mhm.
that's true.
Okay,
They
so
have them like highlighted and stuff.
Yes.
right. So,
Highlighted, and then even the magazine article at the very end
Yes.
that talked about, they quoting his ancestor Ben's own words, and I was writing that
Right.
down, the name of the magazine, and so there was more of it. Yeah, the camera staying on the document so you could see it, see exactly, and
Right.
even of course that's the advantage of watching it again,
Yes.
where you can pause and rewind. So an hour show took me 3 hours.
well,
I think this season there's a lot of dotting of I's and crossing of T's just to make sure that there is the next season.
now I was listening this morning to the Family Tree Magazine monthly podcast, which Lisa Louise Cook does, and on it she was interviewing Diane Haddad, who is the editor, and
Yeah.
she does a weekly post about the episode, and she was saying that the reason the episodes have been delayed this season is because they had to go through an extra verification process through professional researchers.
Oh.
That's great. That's great, though.
That is good.
So it's good for us because I'm hoping that even though you can't present everything, but maybe
Right.
having that information out there that it is going through the extra step of additional researchers for verification.
And that list of those names were at the end.
Right.
A list of,
Yeah.
besides the lead researcher and so forth,
Right.
but it listed all the other ones.
Right.
That,
So
the background.
maybe that will help people feel better about what they're seeing this season.
Well, I have a question. For the panel. I can't remember in my brain the last seasons and who was on there and what the topics were, like Irish or whatever. But is it just me, or does it seem like there's more African American research in this season? And I'm wondering if it's due to the Ben Affleck.
There's more slavery. Yeah. There's more slavery.
I wondered about that. I wonder if it was just me or if anybody else is thinking that.
I think it's this first couple one because next week they're all white guys. But what
Well, 2 out of the 3 have been a lot of African Americans so far, so I just
Right.
wondered.
But that's good though.
It is good.
That's the whole situation brought a lot of good out because of the
Yes.
topic,
Mhm.
and that we all have to deal with something that we may not like or isn't
Right.
very emotional and so forth. But to bring out those cases, like it wasn't just one instance. Look at all these others, and with Maya, having the whole thing with African American and Jewish, white Jewish. So it's like there was two sides, and but I did think that they have had quite a few, even though I didn't see the first couple of episodes, but I know who was on them, and so it's good that an emphasis on that is being made. and then also now cover other areas, other ethnic backgrounds and so forth too.
Do you have a thought on that, Terry?
I actually do.
Really?
Personally, I don't care who he does and who he doesn't do. It makes no difference to me, because even if he did, strictly all African American, it's still a learning process for those of us who aren't researching
Absolutely.
African Americans or slaveholders. But I will say this. He is making comments now about anybody they found as a slaveholder. And I don't remember, it might have been yesterday's, it might have been Tuesdays, or it might have been last week's, but they were scanning the tree, and they got to like a dead end, and they did make comments, oh, well, here's so-and-so, we've come to a dead end, but we did find that he was a slaveholder. And then they jumped to the next section. So he's like nonchalantly throwing it out there. I don't know if anybody else caught that. I was like, oh,
I haven't.
I didn't catch that.
Wow. Okay then.
What I did like, though, it shows the viewers, and especially anybody anybody who's getting interested in getting started, that just because you get so far here, go over here. He's showing both, male, paternal and maternal lines, and if that doesn't work, then go over here. Because what you find here, and what I've always taught in classes and clients and stuff, is, stop that and go over here, because this one can provide a clue of the way you do the research or the type of the record sets. And so forth over here that you can use here too. I thought that was really good. That was really pointed out, or I picked up on that with this episode. So.
Yep, I agree. Good that he's doing that, showing all the different angles that they can go.
Right. That there's not just one, and maybe Melissa or Terry pointed out that just because you don't have that ethnic background, or just because you don't have research in that specific area, you can apply the same methodology or learn about different things to help you in your own research.
Yes.
Just like this Pale of Settlement, and getting the clues and tips on Jewish research. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to start working on that tomorrow.
So,
wish you luck now.
So speaking of, unusual things and what they were commenting on, did any of you find it interesting, the story about, I think it was for Ms. Rhimes, who her ancestors were the ones who had to sneak off in the middle of the night from Mississippi?
Yes.
I had never heard of anything like that before.
Me either. And my question was, where did that story come from? Where did they find that story?
Yeah.
Because she didn't know anything about it, so where did that come from?
What cousin did they track down to interview?
Yes. Absolutely.
Whose diary did they find,
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I'm not the only one, because I was watching
And
it.
that would have been,
Yeah. I just,
That's
wow.
crazy.
Yeah.
Look, all I gotta say is this: each of them had a great story that they could turn into a movie.
Yes, they did.
They did.
Let's pray that they do something with it and get some of the yucky stuff off the TV and put some interesting stuff in.
Well, let's see here. We have a comedian, an actor, and a producer. I think they can do this.
They can do that.
That's
right.
Did you catch what the $900 he paid and bought the 40 acres would be worth today?
Yeah.
I wrote that down. 14,000. It's like, whoa!
Don't
Like
you love inflation?
pat him on the back, yeah.
Yeah, that was impressive.
Yeah.
And then and this was James Love, and then he owned it the rest of his life.
Right.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if that was that one or another one that went back and bought more, but I think that was one of the other ones.
He
He
did.
did.
You got
He
another
did.
100 acres.
I think it was a total of about 200 acres total with both purchases.
So, but I mean,
In Clarendon County, South Carolina, who would have thought, Who would have thought?
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
So I've been putting off the last subject that we wanted to talk about on our bullet point because, it's my favorite and we can talk forever and ever and ever about it.
Who is it, DNA?
Yeah, half the town wanted to talk about DNA.
I can't imagine what that would be.
I know. Y'all know me so well. But I wasn't the only one who brought it up. A lot of you wanted to discuss it too.
I did as well.
So
Yeah.
who wants to start? Nobody? Seriously?
Well,
I thought it was Kenyon's reaction to being Chinese. I thought was priceless.
That was cute.
I loved
Yeah,
his
yeah.
comment.
yeah, and I
Wait,
saw it was
you're
like
in the black-
0.7% or something.
Yeah.
I was like, well, that's a bit of a stretch.
Hang on, what'd you say, Tara? You broke up.
I love that he said, because here I am, you know, I've been a black man and now I'm Chinese.
And now Chinese.
Yeah.
Okay, so I felt there were some interesting things, and I liked how they also pulled in. Who did he match? It wasn't. Who was also the one who had Madagascar?
Oh, it was
Maya.
It was Maya.
Maya.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, because she thought that from family lore that there was Native American,
Yes.
and there was
Right.
none but Madagascar. And she goes, that just blew her away.
Yeah.
right. But it's one of those things where I like to point out to people that you not only have to think about, okay, this is the country my ancestor came from, but you seriously have to think about migration patterns across the globe. And okay, so I'm going to use Europe as an example because I'm a white girl and that's what I do. But because when you look at populations of wars and people moving in and out and the plague and there's all sorts of wonderful technical terms for those, but let's say large populations of people die off and new people come in, and then how we move around the world, and men love to leave presents wherever they go.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Isn't it? So I think sometimes people forget that we weren't just stationary, we just didn't evolve in the place where we're, currently standing. We had to.
I mean, my ancestor just didn't plop into Minnesota.
I'm not.
They sprouted from the earth.
Aliens, fully formed, dropped on the planet. Yes.
Mine sprouted in 1840 Ireland. I don't know what you're talking about.
So here's talking with one of my friends, and I know if she watches this show, I'll get a phone call from her lady going, "Would you stop talking about my family like this?" But her husband has taken YDNA tests. Now, I should say her husband, his grandfather and grandmother, okay, his paternal grandparents and his maternal grandparents both immigrated over from the Germany area, Bavaria, Switzerland, that Central European area, right? So when he takes a YDNA test, what would you expect? Germany, right?
Sure.
Germanic,
Yeah, German.
something
You would
Central
think.
European. No, he's getting matches to people in Scotland.
Okay. Well, that makes sense.
And then his lovely wife, who's been doing genealogy since she was like 12, started looking at the history of the area and the mercenary troops that came in with some of the wars, who were Highlanders
There you go.
in the mid to late 1800s.
I see.
So
Yes.
yes, men, they like to leave presents. So that's the only thing they could think of. Why is he showing so much Celtic and northern Scotland area, and then the YDNA showing connections to Scottish men? There has to be something there when he has all of his grandparents were from Central Europe.
Well, that's like the commercial. He says, I always thought I was German, and I wore lederhosens.
Right.
And things popped up, and the Scottish or Irish. So now we're wearing a kilt, and I'm going, I've got to do this, and if they don't agree, then I'm going to go out in the middle of the night while they're sleeping and swab their cheeks, and because it's like because we're saying everybody German, and it was the females that married in that were Irish, and it's like I want to know, especially the way not habits, but when they refer to history. They're not speaking so much of German in Germany, and so
Right.
I wonder, So yeah, I decided I'm just going to swab in the middle of the night.
Now, I
Let's
think.
go back though, really quick to Maya's test.
Mhm.
So she tested because the Native American was the family streak.
Right.
Mhm.
I'm assuming they did autosomal.
They would have had to.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what's going to tell you. So, is it true that she would get a portion of it, or is it possible that it could have missed her and maybe her brother has that portion?
Well, it depends on how far back it is. Yeah. I mean, with autosomal testing, right? It's only going to show you what the DNA you have inside of you. So, in each generation, it gets, diluted and diluted and diluted out. And you could have something that a sibling could have. I always use my husband's example. He has two second great grandmothers, one from Denmark and one from Bavaria area, Pomeranian and Bavaria. He has no German that shows up in his bloodline. He shows up as 99% British Isles. So we have on paper two documentations of women who were one from Denmark and one from mother from Bavaria, father from Pomerania. You would think it's in there, but it's far enough back that it's not showing up.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So basically, Maya needs to have her brother tested as well.
Yeah, so that's why we always say, genetic genealogists are always like, test as many people as you can afford, or they can afford, because the larger your sample, the larger the pool of people you test, the more data points you collect.
So she should also test her cousins that descend from that same grandparent.
Correct.
Supposedly this is him.
Right. I mean, that's one of the reasons why my grandmother was the grandchild of Irish and German immigrants, one of 4 girls. The only one living. She just turned 97 this year.
Oh,
so
wow.
when I was home in 2013 for FGS, I made sure to talk to her, and then last year I got my aunt to get her to do a DNA test, because that way I'm 2 steps closer to that line.
Yeah.
Well, along with going in the middle of the night swabbing and getting into all these cheeks, I'm going to have to get into their wallets, too.
Seriously.
But don't tell them.
Just wait for those sales and stock up, right?
Yep.
Ask for gift cards, like, the American Express gift cards for, all presents, and then just go out and use those.
There you go.
Your present to me is to take a DNA test.
Worth a shot.
So we're coming up on the end of our time, believe it or not. We've talked about a lot of other things. Anybody have any last comments, tidbits, things that we forgot to talk about that we want to make sure we touch on before we leave this evening?
Nope, I'm good.
Anybody?
Okay.
Valerie's got something.
You always know Valerie's got something.
The girl's got 6 pages of notes. She's got something.
No, just to
You
remind...
overachiever.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in a class and Valerie did all of our homework for us.
Yeah, we appreciate that you take our show seriously.
I really do. To remind us all and everybody that's watching is that these were real people. What really touched me, and still, and if I can get through this comment, was Maya's tears, because she looked at the tick mark and then realized, when he said, you just seen age and gender, but there was that 5-year-old boy, and that was 2 generations of her family there, and that she immediately thought of her 5-year-old, and it does, and when just coming off a research trip at the Family History Library, there was an ancestor. The child was hit by a passenger train in Chicago, and I just sat there after looking at this in the hotel. I just sat there and cried, so I could relate to her.
Was that family though?
Huh?
Was that your family or was that client?
That was my family, and I haven't looked up yet what the relationship is. It was down my great grandfather's sister's line,
Send me the
and
name, and the next time I go down to the Daily Center, I'll look for a probate.
ooh, well, it was a little boy. It was a 13-year-old.
Because he probably got money from the company.
From the railroad. Ooh,
The railroad.
I'll send that to you.
Point.
Because I have a 17-year-old great uncle that happened to, and I got his probate packet. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You might
But
have to check court records too, because the family could have filed a civil suit
Yes.
against them.
Against the railroad.
It'll be all of that together.
Will all be in one. Okay. Here in Tennessee, they're separate.
And there was side-by-side death certificates. One said inquest pending, and then, of course, the other one. And so I looked right away to see if the coroner's inquest records were, but they only went up to a certain year, and it didn't include that one. So I thought of Terry. Oh. But yeah, so just the human factor and the tears and what she felt, and then same way with Chandra, So the human side.
Even Keenen, said. This was not that long ago, as he was looking at his enslaved ancestors. This was not that long ago, and he said that gives me an uneasy feeling. So these are real people and real circumstances.
Right.
But and it's not just a tick mark.
Right.
Right.
That was my little boy.
All right, now we all need tissues.
I'm sorry. You asked for one last comment. Throw away the notes.
And on that note, we will send everybody off to drink wine.
Excellent idea.
Oh, it's always a great idea around here, especially with an impending snowmageddon of doom coming. Oh my gosh, yes. All right. Well, if nobody else has any other comments, I'll let everybody know what's going to be happening next week. Next week, we will have Chit Chat on, of course, the next episode of Finding Your Roots. And they have Jimmy Kimmel, Norman Lear, and Bill Hadler on. Now, I had to go look up who Norman Lear was.
Oh.
I'm like, who is that old man? I don't know his name. Stop laughing at me. So, for those of you who don't know, who are like me, because obviously I'm a baby in this group, I was kind of impressed. He's a television writer and producer who did shows from the 70s like All in the Family, Sanford and Son, One Day at a Time, The Jeffersons.
I was little. That's how I know.
And on. And know, I'm looking at this list, and I'm like, my grandmother maybe watched that one and that one and that one. And so
I watched all of those.
I watched all those.
So I was like, holy crap, the old guy's got street cred. But yeah, sorry, I had to go look it up. So I figured if I was looking somebody up, there had to be other people. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. And then one last thing that I've been asked to remind people is sometimes if you don't tape or DVR the show for the first time it airs, some PBS stations are actually showing other shows in the time slot where it says Finding Your Roots for later episodes. So check your DVRs, everybody, and remember that if you miss it or it tapes something not Finding Your Roots, PBS is now putting it online the next day. So everybody can watch it online if possible. So, yay! More opportunities, right?
Yep.
So on that note, remember, we would love to hear from you. So drop us a line in the comments below. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, or just send us a plain old email at editor@theinDepthGenealogist.com. Have a great day, everyone. Remember to go in depth with all of your ancestors. Bye.